Okay, thank you, Shashi, for inviting me to this talk. Um, so I'm going to talk about spatiotemporal prediction of epidemic spread, data models and ensembles. And this is work done with Professor Shashi and so let me briefly tell you about mathematical modeling of infectious diseases. So the earliest mathematical model for infectious diseases started appearing in the 1760. It was done by Daniel Bernoulli for smallpox. Thereafter, there has been a lot of work in epidemiology and in infectious disease modeling, mathematical models for infectious diseases. And as we see, there are mainly three or four types of models that are available. The most popular and most traditional model that is available is what is called as compartment models. So these are traditionally the what is called as an SIR model, susceptible, infected, recovered, or removed, SEIR, and those kind of models. So these are ordinary differential equations where the population is split into compartments, each compartment being representing a part of the population, and ordinary differential equations are written on how this particular compartment, the number in that compartment, evolves with time. Right, so that is the most fundamental epidemiological model that is used, which is called as the compartment models. And then there is, so this is a top-down approach, and then there is a bottom-up approach where individual entities are modeled in an agent-based modeling framework. These ABMs have individuals, that members who have certain characteristics and properties, and they interact with each other in a stochastic environment. And that is how the infectious disease spread is modeled. Then there are stochastic models, and what we have introduced, which is what is called as the population balance partial differential equation model, right? So that will be the key focus of my talk today. But before going to that, I will just give you an idea about what are the different types of models that are there, because it helps to set the stage. You have heard yesterday about a network model, which is basically an agent-based model within one part combined with the ordinary differential equation. So it helps many of you are researchers and students, right? So it helps to understand what the different models are. So I'll just quickly tell you about this SIR model, which there is three compartments: susceptible, infectious, and recovered. So the susceptible population becomes infected, and then thereafter they recover or die, right? So that is removed. And then these kind of ordinary differential equations are written for each of these individual compartments, right? So ds by dt, di by dt, dr by dt, rate of change with time. And you can rewrite this and introduce what is called as a basic reproduction rate, right? So initially, so this S by N number, right? So susceptible to the total number of population initially is almost one. Right, so in that case, right, so you can write this di by dt as r0 minus 1, where r0 is defined as the basic reproduction rate, right? So you can write this as r0 minus 1 times gamma I. So gamma I is how much new infection is being caused, right? So this basic reproduction rate, it defines the number of secondary infections one infected person causes. So this is a r naught value, which a lot of people keep talking about. If r naught is greater than 1, that means we have an exponential growth in the infection. If it is less than 1, the infection is under control, right? So that's basically fundamental understanding of epidemiological spread of diseases, right? So this is why people keep talking about this R naught value. The use of SIR model is mostly diagnostic. That is, after the fact, you can analyze and say, yeah, R naught was great, R naught was less, and then use that R naught to predict ahead for a few days, right? So that is the capacity of this SIR model. Then there are several derivatives of this SIR model, especially what is called as SCIR model is what is more popular. The MIT Delphi model is one such SCIR model, right? So you can increase the number of compartments in how many ever way you want, and depending on the compute you have, you can do that, right? So now going agent-based models, right? So stochastic models is, again, it's an old system, right? So about 1920s. So here the simple assumption is that there is complete mixing of population, and a probability is defined of a susceptible person getting infected from the infected crowd. And then a Monte Carlo simulation is done to see how this infected population evolves in this population. Then there is agent-based model, right? So our Rajesh has worked on that, right? So at the beginning of the pandemic, and I think he will tell you that it's a very computationally expensive model, right? So you really require high-performance computing, and each individual is modeled as an agent who are interacting with each other according to certain rules. It is very useful for scenario analysis, and it is widely used for public policy analysis. But the problem is that it is a computationally expensive Monte Carlo method, and even though there's a lot of expressivity power, it requires a lot of data to be fed in. It needs you to model human behavior, which we all know is not very, very easy, right? It's a difficult task. So this is where the advanced stochastic model, agent-based model lies. So you might ask the question, okay, so there are so many of these models, right? So what is the goal, right? So my favorite quote is that essentially all models are wrong, but some are useful, right? So that is where we come in. So what is the major need for a model, right? So it is, we believe it is for actionable policy planning of resources, right? So that's why a model is required. So the information that these SIR models, are they enough for planning lockdown or unlock strategies? Can they be run in real time, right? So in order to inform policy, can we use those for quarantine rules, hospital beds, right? So vaccination or treatment scheduling, right? So that those are the needs, right? So answering these questions are what is important and what the model should be able to do. So then question naturally comes, are the existing models capable of giving these kind of insightful predictions, or do we need more, right? Can we predict the spread of pandemics with insight into where it is happening, location, spatial location, the severity of the infection so as to help us plan the bed requirements, etc. Then how long will a person be having the disease? How will they spread? What is the age of the population in which it is getting affected, right? So thinking along these lines, we developed this spatio-temporal predictive modeling framework for infectious disease spread that has now been published in Nature Scientific Reports. So this is a new partial differential equation based model, one of the first applications of PDE for epidemiological modeling. So here what we do is the infected population is characterized as a 6-dimensional variable with 3 dimensions in 2 in space, 1 in time, and then there are several internal coordinates like the age of the disease, infection level, population age. So infection level means are they asymptomatic, mild, medium, severe, very severe? How long has it been since the infection started? Right. So what is the age of the population? All these are internal coordinates, and based on the 6-dimensional variables, we write this population balance equations, population balance model. So this idea comes from chemical engineering, in fact, right? So where how species interact with each other, and there are several terms in this equation. The most important of that is this guy over here, which is called as the nucleation term. So this nucleation term is what controls how much new infection we are introducing into the system, right? So the key modeling lies in how we get this nucleation term. Then there is recovery and death that is modeled as a rate, right? So there is a CRCD that goes over here in E. Then the movement of people is modeled as a flux, right? So this term here takes care of the movement of the people. Then there are external flux, right? So if you consider India as a system, then there are flights that come in, people that go out, right? So those kind of incidents are modeled as external inflection of flux, right? So those are handled by the GN and the F terms in the model. And then critically, the new infections are introduced with a disease age of 0. That is, when a person gets the disease, their disease duration is 0, right? So they're just starting of the disease. And this is introduced by the B-nuke term, right? So the nucleation term. And these new infections are introduced at different age levels and different levels of infection, right? So depending on their severity, this is the model is capable of introducing this disease at that levels. And so the internal coordinates are a unique characteristic of our population balance model and of the population. So this is the time since infection, age of population, and severity of infection. And at any space and time, right? So this population has a distribution. The population has a distribution over these internal coordinates. And so another modeling, important modeling point is how this distribution is modeled, right? So first is how the nucleation is modeled, and second is how this distribution is modeled. Based on this distribution, we can then define how quarantining, how other nucleation, how recovery, death, all are dependent on these internal coordinates and how they can be modeled, right? So this is a unique characteristics of our PDE model. So let me quickly get into how nucleation works, right? So this is the most important point, right? So the nucleation term, there is actually what is a term similar to the R0 factor in the SIR model, right? So new infections per infected population. And then there is an integral over all the internal coordinates where there's a quarantining factor that is removed from the infected population. So some quarantining factor is removed from the infected population, and this R, right? So how we model this R, the new infections per infected per positive case, right? So that model is done. So it's actually temporal, right? So it changes with time. This R factor changes with time, and that allows us to do several scenario analysis into the future, right? So depending on how we think the people interact with each other through the interaction factor, how hygienic people are, like how they wash their hands or how they remain hygienic, this hygiene factor. And then the most important is this physical distancing factor, which tells you how people are in, so are they wearing masks? Are they maintaining 6 feet distance? Are the aerosols being generated, right? So those factors is what is the physical distance factor. And then of course, age is an important factor in how people get infected. And finally, the infection severity, right? So are people getting infected, right? At what age, at what level, right? So are people getting infected? So all of these are modeled accordingly, like with the logistic or a probit or a negative logistic model, right? So even Gaussian are fit to this based on and literature, right? So there is a sigma factor which is called as the interactivity index, right? So H is the hygiene factor. So all these factors, right? So are modeled, and using that is how we control. These are the knobs in which we can control the future scenario projections. So important, right? So if you are coming from the SIR world, right? So what this means is giving a future scenario of how the R0 changes, right? So that is roughly the idea, but of course, because this is defined based on the internal coordinates, there's much more richer information over here. But if you are from the SIR or the agent-based modeling world, this helps to understand how how we are doing this prediction, right? So the recovery and death again is modeled based on what we have understood from literature, what happened in Wuhan, Italy, right? So a lot of literature has come, and based on that, those F4, F5 terms are fit, right? So this is about recovery and death. I'll quickly get into, before we go there, right? So this partial differential equation is solved using finite element methods. So let me not go too much into detail there. We actually use discontinuous Galerkin, upwind for advection, backward Euler, right? So this is a computational science talk. So I just put this slide over here so that you know that, okay, a finite element method has been used to solve this PDE. And in fact, it's not very expensive to solve, right? So we solve it on an 8-core system, and a run for all India for about 1 year, right? Finishes in less than half an hour or something like that, right? It doesn't take too much time. It is not as computationally expensive as an agent-based model for just a city, right? So this is all India predictions. We can do that. We started doing this last April, right? So April of 2020 is when we got together and started doing this modeling. So for the wave 1, we actually released 5 projections in 2020. On 3rd May was our first release, then 28 May, 18 June, 6 August, and 19 September. Coincidence, or if it was our prophecy, or just accurate modeling with uncertainty quantification ensembles, no prize for guessing. I will say it is the 3. But yeah, we still don't know if it's a coincidence or prophecy. On 3rd May and 28th May, we had actually forecast that a peak will happen sometime in September to December, and there will be a worst case scenario of 10 lakh active cases at peak and about total 90 lakh cases by March 21. So this we had predicted back in May. The real data shows that a peak happened on September 18th with 10 lakh active cases and totally about 1.2 crores by March 21. Not bad, right? So it's not really, so is it coincidence, prophecy, or accurate modeling? Yeah, I leave that to the audience. one of the early intervention suggestions that we had suggested at that time was about this idea of a weekly circuit breaker, right? So weekly lockdown kind of a system with at least 75% compliance, right? Either on a Saturday, Sunday, weekend, or Wednesday, Sunday. So this was one of the early intervention kind of system that we had thought would help in reducing the total caseload by about 10 to 20%. Right. So, and I think some of the state governments have in fact implemented it, but not in the way that we had anticipated it. Right. So that is one of the major suggestions that we gave. And then we did a lot of ensemble runs, scenario analysis and uncertainty bands. Right. So in May and August, the scenario analysis that we were giving out were what we called as the current scenario, that is business as usual, how things are going currently. Then a better scenario in which there is better social distancing by people, right? So they wear their mask and other things. And then a worse scenario, and with this intermittent lockdown strategy. So in all our May and August scenario analysis, this is what we were giving. So what you see over here is the uncertainty band that we had predicted, I think sometime in this comes from our August 6th model, right? So August 6th model, this is kind of the uncertainty bands that we had predicted throughout, right? So at that time, people were like, okay, we went to many news channels and all, and they called us alarmists, right? So, but post fact, all models are like that, right? So after the fact, hindsight is 2020, right? Then in starting from September, we changed our scenario analysis a little bit. And by that time, there was evidence that started coming about the seroprevalence factor. So if Professor Giridhar Babu is there on the call, right? So many of our decisions to start modeling comes from your tweets, right? So we follow that and then start putting those into numbers and putting it in our model. Then in the September scenario analysis, right, so we did different seroprevalence factors, right, based on what the national survey was told us, and different vaccine start dates, right? So, and ensembles were generated based on these uncertain parameters. We varied these uncertain parameters and then just started churning out different scenario analysis and ensembles. Right? So that's what you see here, right? So similar to that, it's there on our website. And in wave one with vaccination and seroprevalence, again, right? So a model forecast that was released in the first week of August. So we also had not really looked at it that carefully, but it looks like we had picked up a kind of like a second wave, right? So it's the date is kind of off, but still the model was giving a second wave. So in one of our ensembles, right, it was actually doing kind of a second wave. So by August and September, we were doing this seroprevalence factor, and what we found that for every case, right, there were about 20 infections, right? So that is unreported. So that was fitting the data well. And then we had anticipated at that time in August, we had anticipated that about 30 lakh doses could be given per day, and this is the number that we had used. It turns out that our estimates, like just a back of the envelope kind of calculation, but it turns out to be correct. Right, so this is intuition mostly running some of the parameter fixes. In November, right, the prevalence reduced, and we also started getting busy with the semester and other things, and no further updates were done after about September last week. Right, so we relaxed and did not do too much. And then, yeah, another important point in our model is that it produces a distribution of infection across severity, infection, and patient age, right? So this allows us to do that. And in March this year, right, when second wave started, we again started running our model. By that time, our paper had also got accepted. And in the second wave forecast, what we were saying is that there are about 30 lakh vaccinations every day. And there are 2 unreported cases for every reported case. And then the question was, should there be lockdown-like scenario or not, right? So should there be a lockdown-like situation? And so for that, the latest forecast that you can see on our website is that on 27 April, we had a simulated situation in which there was a 15-day lockdown-like scenario, a 21-day lockdown-like scenario, and a 1-month lockdown-like scenario. And for Karnataka, and these numbers have been shared with Dr. Giridhar also, right? So what we see is that if there is some kind of lockdown-like situation, we see by the end of May, 30 to 50% reduction, and by June, about 80% reduction in the new confirmed cases. Longer lockdowns, of course, have higher reduction that is possible in the confirmed, active, and deaths. Then this is how the daily confirmed cases in Karnataka looks like, right? So you can kind of see, so these are the different scenarios. If there is no lockdown, the new confirmed cases keep on increasing. If there's a 15-day lockdown starting on April 27th, right? So we achieve about 1/5, right? So about 80% reduction is obtainable by about June 11th, right? So end of June, first week of June. Then of course higher scenarios, higher lockdowns, longer lockdowns cost a higher reduction. So and keeping all the things in mind, we think that graded unlock procedure is required. So what you see as a growth over here, right? So that is unlock, right? What happens in unlock, right? So once unlock happens, how the case spreads. So it is really on the hands of the people on how you maintain the social distancing and others, right? That is what governs the growth of the infection. Not just the case load, right? So we also can project the ICU requirement, oxygenated bed requirement, right? So and the deceased numbers, right? So all of these in different scenarios we have projected, and what we think that with the lockdown, right, about 60 to 70% reduction is achievable in the number of ICU beds and oxygenated beds based on the active cases that are reported. And we can also do an analysis and say which of the districts, right? So because it's a spatio-temporal model, which of the districts are doing well compared to what we predict, right? So we think that about 6 districts are doing better than what the 15-day lockdown predictions are. Some districts are doing just okay, and there are several districts which don't do as good, right? As of 6th May, right? Based on data on 5th May, right? So it's about 1 week of lockdown in effect. It's how, so these kind of analysis is also possible because we have a spatio-temporal model. Similarly, Bangalore urban also we had predicted, and in Bangalore urban there is an interesting factor. It is that even without lockdown, kind of a peak is obtained in the daily active cases, but at a very high load, right? So the reason is it's a closed population, right? So and bulk of cases in Bangalore urban, sorry, bulk of cases in Karnataka is actually in Bangalore urban, right? So because the population spread is like that, right? So that's why we see that kind of behavior in Bangalore. But of course, with lockdown, there is a tremendous reduction, right? So 80% odd reduction is possible. So all our forecasts are actually available on this website, right? So it's taken 5 minutes more than allotted, right? So the new computational, so the conclusion, right? So we have a new computational model of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is applied to forecast scenarios for India. This new model actually can be applied to other infections also. Computationally, it is more efficient than agent-based model, and with expressivity power, right, it is more compact than compartment models, right? So you don't need so many compartments and other things, right? It allows. And it also allows you to predict into the future with different scenarios, how we think the infections will change every week, right? So all those things can be put in to how we model that F1 to Fy terms, right? So those are all functions of space and time, so that can be fit, and a scenario analysis can be done, right? So with that, I conclude and open for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Deepak, for the talk. And maybe we can take a couple of more questions. We have another 3 more minutes. You are just ahead of the schedule. That's fine. So there is a question: what explains the crust between the November 20 to March 2021 with benefits of insight? We can clearly see. Okay, that's maybe only a comment. I don't see. There's a question. Or otherwise, the question from Sangeeta. So, are there any predictions on third wave? Will you take vaccination in account for future predictions?
So vaccination is already there in the current model, right? So vaccination is included, but the impact of vaccination on the immediate spread, right, short-term spread is very minimal, right? So because the number of vaccines that we give, it's at the maximum capacity. It's a tremendous job, right? So giving vaccine to all these people, it's a tremendous job that is being done, right? So with nothing against that, right? So even with all that, the population of India is just huge, right? So to get vaccine to a stage in which it helps stop spreading is difficult. So this is what I think, right? So more than vaccine hesitancy, we have a mask hesitancy. So that mask hesitancy, if it is avoided, it will help in reducing the spread a lot. right? So that's another question.
Okay, the next question is spread mechanisms are changing every few weeks. That isn't taking into consideration. Maybe I think you have already commented, but maybe you can also.
Yeah, so all this is a mathematical model with a scenario analysis, right? So these are projections based on how we think people will behave. So now this is an active live situation, right? So it is an evolving scenario. Things change, right? So we are aware of that, and once in a while we used to update, right? So depending on the availability of data and other things, we definitely change it. And as Professor Shashi also says, is it really the mathematical model failing us by not giving prediction, or we are failing the mathematical model by feeding it with wrong data or wrong assumptions, right? So, or incompatible assumptions, right? So that's up to the people, right? So if everybody keeps in mind the COVID appropriate behavior, then I think really the numbers will come down, right? So this is what we see in the model. Okay.
Okay, I think the next question is, does the order of accuracy of the FEM affect the accuracy of the predictions?
So we have done some sensitivity study on that, and the best order of accuracy is being used currently. Yeah.
Okay, the last question. So is there a prediction? I think it could be a prediction of third wave as it is being talked about a lot.
Okay, so I'm not the right person to answer about third, fourth, nth wave, right? So you should have asked that question to Dr. Giridhar Babu ahead of time, right? So when will a third wave come, right? So that if none of us are actually following the COVID appropriate behavior, maybe it comes sooner, right? If everybody is following the COVID appropriate behavior, maybe it comes a little bit later, right? So that's all we can say at the moment. But to induce a second, third wave, right? So that is in the model, that is a little bit difficult thing to do.
Sashi, I would like to ask one more question.
Yeah.
Sure, Rajesh.
So,
Go ahead. Last question.
Deepak, you said that your model, one of the models, one of the scenarios predicted a second wave.
Yeah.
Do you understand why it predicted the second wave? Was just increased mobility, reduced COVID appropriate behavior, or did you have variants of mutations as well
No,
as
there
antibody
was
waning and other such
no
things?
mutation. It's some stable point of the PDE, I think, right? So somehow the factors are combining together, and for one particular ensemble, it is showing that kind of behavior, right? So we don't understand it that well as of the moment, right? So
Then maybe I think some effort should be put into understanding why that is a solution that might give us some hints.
yes.
Because I don't think you have actual mobility. Any transfer across regions is because of advection, which is local transfer to neighbors and things like that. And then that's the way there is a spatial dependence that comes into the picture, taking population density into account. There's no actual mobility in your model, if I understand correctly.
So, mobility as in?
Mobility as in, I move from, let us say,
No, so
Bangalore
this is
to...
not an individual. There are no agents here. It's a mean field model, right? So,
so that's why it is advective, because there is local interaction.
So these
small...
terms, right? So I think I understand the question. So there are terms called GN and F in the model, which allows for you to fly across and come to one from the other, right? So train movement, flight movement, all that can be taken care.
It goes as a source and sink.
So source, sink, and the movement, right? So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that there are plenty of questions. Please feel free to write an email or contact Deepak or myself, right? So we are happy to answer this question given the shortage of time. So we will close this session. Once again, thanks the speaker, thank all participants for the wonderful question. And we will move on to the